There's a lot going on this week when it comes to presidential pardons. Trump is letting a bunch of people off the hook, including folks like Rudy Giuliani and others involved in trying to overturn the 2020 election results. But today we're focusing on someone that Trump pardoned or gave clemency to in the final hours of his presidency, his first presidency. And one of them is a gentleman by the name of Jonathan Braun. He's a convicted marijuana trafficker from Long Island. And Trump let him out, even though he had a 10-year sentence, and Trump freed him, let him back out onto the street. Well, it turns out that the guy's a violent criminal, now charged with brand new crimes. He's about to get sentenced again, and it's just a fascinating story of another MAGA character, someone at the center of the MAGA universe. You know, typical move by Trump here, and it's going to come back and bite him in the ass. I'm Shant Karnikian. That's Brian Kabateck. This is Civil Action on the Legal AF Network. Remember, if you like this content, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. If you like any of the folks over here on our network here, we appreciate your support. Brian, where do you want to dive in with this one? We know there's a lot of pardons going on this week. A lot of people are getting freedom. Neither you nor me are on the list yet. So, but really, where do we start here?
Well, first of all, you and I don't need or have an urge or need or anything like that for a pardon. So let's be very clear about this. Because we're not
convicted criminals. Yeah, fun fact. Neither
presidents can pardon, and presidents can grant commutation of sentences. And this, we're specifically here, we're dealing with the commutation of a sentence. That means the conviction doesn't go away, but it means that it's usually like time served. That's what happened to George Santos recently. And I think the lesson to take away from this shot is, sometimes a tiger doesn't change its stripes. In other words, no one should be shocked if a tiger goes and attacks somebody. A tiger didn't go crazy. A tiger went tiger, right? Yeah. And what we're dealing with here is a fellow by the name of Jonathan Braun, who has close connections to Jared Kushner, Trump's son-in-law. And in the final days, maybe even the final day of the Trump presidency first term in 2021, Trump granted this guy clemency. He had been convicted, apparently, of drug trafficking and money laundering. He had fled to Israel for some period of time. He came back. He pled guilty. He was sentenced to prison. And after serving a relatively short period of his sentence, this clemency came down and he was freed. So yeah, that's Jonathan.
And we're not talking minor crimes. This wasn't like a bag of marijuana. We're talking about like tens of thousands, if not 100,000 kilograms of marijuana that he tried to move from Canada into the United States. I mean, the guy was like a criminal, no question there. And he was sentenced. He was sentenced to, I believe, 10 years. He pled guilty too, by the way. So yeah. And I believe I looked this up right now when you were saying that. I looked it up. I think it was Trump's last day in office, and that sentence was commuted. So it was a commutation. It's not a full pardon. I understand that. But it's a commutation. Basically, Trump let this guy out, right? And now Mr. Braun, Jonathan Braun, has reformed, and he's a great man now, and he's a very valuable member of society. Is that what's happened? Is that the happy ending to this story, Brian? I suspect not.
No, let's go through a few things that he's done in the few years since this commutation of his sentence. Okay, so I just want to make sure that we fully cover this, because I want people to fully understand the kind of people that get pardons and commutations of sentences from this president. So what did he do? Well, a few things. First of all, right there at the top is he repeatedly evaded paying a $4 toll while driving both his Ferrari and his Lamborghini. Now, I'm assuming that they're two separate cars, a Lamborghini and a Ferrari, because it happened apparently multiple times. So that's a crime, right? And that just shows a complete lack of control and respect for the system when you do that.
That's not a violent crime, Brian. That's okay. That doesn't sound too bad to me.
Well, let's go to a couple violent crimes.
Okay.
How about the fact that he is accused of and was convicted of assaulting the live-in nanny, the former live-in nanny. Now, you may be asking me, Sean, why is she a former live-in nanny? You want to ask that?
Well, okay, why is she a former nanny? Why doesn't she work with him anymore?
Thanks for asking me that, Sean. She's a former live-in nanny because apparently Mr. Braun entered her room and put her into a headlock and then moved his hands, one set of his hands over his bare genitals, and then groped her breasts.
That's not good. Yeah, all kidding aside, that's straight up sexual assault. That's not good. I think there's also allegations of him assaulting hospital staff. He allegedly swung an IV pole at a nurse. Also not good. That's not good. Yeah, that's bad. That's violent.
Correct. And then apparently his 75-year-old father-in-law was protecting the father-in-law's daughter, in other words, Mr. Braun's wife, when Mr. Braun struck him twice in the head with blows.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the reason, you might want to ask me why the father-in-law was protecting his daughter.
Oh, so it wasn't just a regular fight or something? Why was the father-in-law protecting his daughter, Mr. Braun's wife?
Because he was assaulting and chasing around, Mr. Braun was chasing around his wife, the daughter. And apparently the wife even provided evidence in court documents that he had thrown her off the bed, causing her pain and bruising her legs, and thrown her onto the floor. Then he was also charged with assaulting, I believe, a 3-year-old child who probably has more sense than Mr. Braun.
Yeah. I mean, just despicable stuff. All of this is despicable stuff. And Trump inexplicably pardoned this guy or granted him clemency or commuted his sentence back at the end of
the first time. The first time. He hasn't granted him clemency yet. But I just want to point out that he had an excuse for his behavior. It's because he was using a synthetic psychedelic called 2C-B, which before we were preparing this episode, you immediately knew what that was. And maybe you can explain to us how you knew
I did not immediately know what it was. I said, I've heard of it. I've heard of it. I did not immediately know what it was. No, stop. You're acting like I'm on it right now. No, but really, yeah, that's just kind of really wild stuff.
But let's get serious. Let's get serious for a second. The judge said to him in the sentencing, the federal judge, she said, very few people have had the chance and opportunity you've had. And that chance is based on privilege. And these pardons that we're seeing, they seem to fall into two categories, Shant. One is rich friend, right? Rich or friend or somehow connected. But not so much. It's not like they're looking for people who have been abused by the system. Some African-American kid who at age 19 was arrested for drug trafficking and spending 20 years in prison. These are usually people who've committed some kind of financial crime, whether it's crypto, whether it's some kind of a scam, something like that. So that's one category. The other category is January 6th.
Yeah, it's like political loyalists from top to bottom, from folks like Rudy Giuliani to the actual folks who stormed the Capitol, the real insurrectionists, as I call them. So yeah, that is a good summary of like the two categories: financial contributors, people that rich friends who have contributed to Trump, or Trump believes are going to contribute to him if he gives them this deal, or loyalists or diehard loyalists they need to be high profile. They need to be sort of public figures, public martyrs for Trump's cause, for the MAGA cause. I mean, but this is just, for, again, the party and the movement that talks about law and order, and the president who talks about law and order, making the country safer. He is quite literally putting out violent criminals on the streets by commuting sentences like this. It's just incredibly wild that this has happened. I mean, this guy's going to go back, obviously. I don't know where it ends up, but this is happening all in the backdrop of a week where folks like Giuliani and John Eastman and Mark Meadows, you have all these other people that tried to overturn election results, people that effectively instigated violence and tried to undermine our democracy, getting back put out on.
Right. And what we've also seen here is that the long-standing policy of the pardons, there's a pardon attorney. Remember, Trump fired the pardon attorney because she resisted giving Mel Gibson a pardon, which the president couldn't even give anyways because it was a state court conviction for possessing a gun, because he wanted to have a gun permit or something along those lines. And she got fired. So he's just doing this ad hoc. And then, for example,
this is personal appeals. Maybe he's relying on Fox News coverage, but he's certainly not working with the Office of Pardon Attorney, which was a thing, at least. Yeah.
Right. And when you eliminate the process that exists in something like this is what happens. It just becomes gifts and favors. He thinks that because he thinks he was subject to a witch hunt, that everybody's been subject to a witch hunt. Anybody who looks like him, anybody who matches him is suddenly some kind of a victim that it needs to be rectified. And then he turns around. He gave a pardon to that cryptocurrency guy who had been convicted. And he turned around and said later, when asked in the news, he claimed he didn't even know who that was. Yet he's the one who signs the pardons, right? Yeah. So is this just more pay to play, Shant?
That's exactly what it is. It's just people are out there basically buying quite literally buying get out of jail free cards. And you said something earlier that I think that's a note I'd want to end on. That clemency and pardons and things like that they're supposed to be an act of mercy to either correct injustice or recognition that some type of punishment is too harsh, and to signal that redemption is possible, that punishment has its limits. But when you use that power as like for political favors, it just turns into pay to play. It just turns into the system being rigged. And really, it undermines the whole system. It undermines the whole criminal justice process. And for the party of law and order, for a president, professing that he wants to bring law and order to our streets and stop the violence and free our cities and stuff, he's doing the exact opposite. I mean, just look at his actions. But forget his words for a second. Just look at his actions. He lets some guy out because he's a friend of Jared Kushner's family, and the guy goes out and commits all these violent acts. I mean, he's put a thug on the streets basically, and that's just a sad thing. I mean, this is an interesting issue. We'll cover the other pardons, and I'm sure this won't be the last one. I'm sure there'll be plenty more to come. Tickets are available if you want a pardon. There's a ballroom that needs to be built. You can contribute to that and buy your pardon. Pardons go to the highest bidder. And we'll keep up to date on that and all of those issues. I'm Shant Karnikian. That's Brian Kabateck. This is Civil Action on the Legal AF Network. Again, if you like this content, you want to support this network of independent contributors, independent media, hit that subscribe button and hit that like button. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next one.
Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.